Hello, everybody. I hope the sound is all right. It looks a bit weird to me, so I want to hear your feedback. Can you hear me properly? Before I start, hello, everybody. How you all doing? So people here are having already welcome. Sheikh Yamim, welcome to the club. Welcome. All right. Anything else? All right. Let me hear you. So some people are saying, do many Jews consider Ishmael to be related to Islam? Well, yes. Okay, and can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can anyone give me some feedback that you hear me? Yeah, all right. Sounds like you can hear me. All right, everybody, let's talk. Let's start talking. So what I want to bring up, even though I've already made a video talking about raping to humiliate and that kind of culture. Last week was Parashat Sarah. It's the part in the Bible where Sarah passes away and Abraham passes away, and that story. And I was in Jerusalem during that week, and we talked a lot about this, her life, his life, their children, and it's, even though it's maybe a week late, I thought, I want to bring the story of Ishmael. Ishmael, which according to you guys are saying there is a problem with the sound, very bad sound. Is it better now? Is the sound better? Some distortion. Is the sound better? Sound is still buggy. Okay. Please. Okay, sound buggy. Is it better? No. Need 3 times the volume, but you cannot hear me. Can you hear me? Let me see if I can configure that. Sorry, you guys. I don't know why I changed the mic. You're saying too low. Audio. I changed the mic to my earphones, but I don't think it's a good quality mic. Yeah, sound. This camera, not sound. I don't know what's going on, honestly. I don't know what's happening. Why is that? I don't know. Is it better? Is it any better? This sound is any better? Guess not. So right, I'm using it's the devil. It's definitely the devil. Yeah, it's not better. Where's your old mic? Here's my old mic, but decided not to work. So now it's okay. I changed into my earphones mic. So it shouldn't be good. It's not supposed to be too good, but I don't know what's going on with this one. Why is it not working properly? I don't know what's going on with that one. Honestly, I have no luck. But can you hear me? Is it all right? Can you deal with it? I'm so sorry. Okay, you hear me loud and clear. That's good. Okay, let's talk like that. So let me put this mic on the side. It's not anything that you hear anyway. So, all right, it's not something. So do you guys want to hear the testimony first? Or do you guys want to dive into the Bible and talk about Ishmael and his story? And also the conversation that we've had, because there are a lot of extra materials, extra outside of the Bible stories that people have when it comes to, so people are saying testimony Bible. Let's do a little bit. Look at the Bible first. All right, I love that. It's one at a time. I love that. You guys are amazing. All right, so let me just show a little bit of the testimony so we have a little bit of an understanding. It's just a second here. Okay, so here is in Hebrew. So this is it's Israeli captivity survivor Guy Gilboa Dalal described severe sexual assault by one of his Hamas captors in an exclusive interview. So that's the story, all right? So this is a man, and I'm certain that there are a lot more uh, testimonies of men getting assaulted, and even the video that I've made, Rape to Humiliate, was about a man that came forward and talked about how he was raped on October 7th, but here's the thing that I want to talk about, all right? So there are a lot of things to cover when it comes to Ishmael, and I think the important thing to understand is that the story of Abraham Jews struggle with it. And I could see that in the dinner I had in Jerusalem. So you had Jews from all over, all walks of life. You had every sect of Judaism in that dinner. So this is why, by the way, a lot of the things that I'm sharing with you guys, I run it first by Jews who are from literally every sect, from the most Hasidic ones, the most ultra-Orthodox ones to the most secular ones. I run a lot of the things that I'm sharing with you guys. I tell them to see their reaction, to hear their commentary, to see how they feel about it. You know, even the fact that I am sharing a lot of the Bible with people who are non-Jews and the way I do it. And for the most part, they let me tell you that it is very much approved things that I'm telling you. Even especially the 10 Commandments video where I said, okay, let's read it without a God, with no God, from a completely non-believing atheistic perspective. I ran it by rabbis. The rabbis love it. Okay. So if you are wondering if I'm saying things that are not acceptable in Judaism, well, I can tell you that for the most part, I run it through the entire spectrum of Judaism and it is accepted. So I'm just, if you're wondering. And when it comes to the story of Abraham, on one hand, he destroyed the idols, right? And he left and he decided to move to Israel and basically to build his own civilization. On the other hand, he went against a very basic principles of Judaism, like not marrying or having relations with siblings. And there is this conversation, like the Judaism and Jews really struggle with the fact that he was married to his half sister. It's not, it's like, and then you see all kind of ways that Judaism tries to like handle that and his brother and that relationship and like this whole everything. So I want to give a little bit of historic perspective. All right. So Abraham and Moses are actually two stories that we have. And Israel, the Jewish tradition is a clash of cultures. So you have one civilization that comes from the north and the other civilization that is Egyptian. The Egyptian civilization was a lot more women have equal rights to men. It was a lot more feminist. The tradition that Abraham came from was a lot less feminist. And when I say a lot less, I mean like way less. Women were property in Sumar and Akkad and all those areas and the areas and the culture that Abraham came from. And to this day, there are sects there that marry their siblings. So yeah, it's not out of the blue that he did that. That tradition the could say even I'm pretty sure it's maybe still preserved in the restaurant tradition. Yeah, you can also marry your sibling, which is a big no in Judaism. But Judaism is not just what it was in like the Akkadian version, and that's civilization that comes from the East. There was another civilization that was Egyptian civilization. So it you can see the struggle and the conflict between those two. And and Abraham did something that is unthinkable in a sense that Sarah, his sister wife, half sister wife, he gave her away not once but twice. When two different men, Abimelech and the king of Egypt, came and said, "Oh, it's well, who is this nice-looking woman?" He said, "Oh, that's my sister's. Wanna go at it?" And Judaism is like, what? Why? Why? What? Why did Abraham give away his wife? Not once, twice. And then in the Egyptian culture, once they figured out, they were like, "What are you doing?" But I guess she was a very impressive woman, and if you really look at it from maybe a bit different perspective, you can almost see, and that is an aspect that Judaism doesn't like cover too much, that in a sense he comes from one civilization. He's trying to build a new civilization because he didn't like the idols of the civilization that he came from. And he wants to understand the other big civilization, which is the Egyptian one, and the local, to create something new, because he was not happy with the one that he came out of. That's what the idol thing is, and this is why he left, and this is why he started exploring. And you can almost say that maybe the reason that he gave away his wife, he was like, he just implemented a spy, and he was like, "Hey, Sarah, sweetheart, can you go live a little bit with the Pharaoh, then and then we'll know what's their tradition like, how are they like?" And and so Sarah was an amazing woman, and in these stories it was a failure. Here's another thing that we see. The more Sarah herself was exposed to the local traditions and the Egyptian tradition, the more she found herself opposing to Abraham on occasion. Okay, so the Pharaoh, when he was like, "Dude, why didn't you say that was your wife?" Right? It was like, "Oh, that's not something that we do," and that is a cultural clash because where he came from, it's like, okay, something that they do, and that was like the biblical way of saying, "Hey, what you did, there is a better culture, a better way to do something." And so the more I think the other aspect of it is that the more Sarah learned the other culture, like the more she spied, whether it's on the from Pharaoh or Abimelech, the more she saw the local traditions, the more she was like, "Yeah, a woman has a voice, and I might as well use it." And then I want to skip the Lot story. I'm going to skip it a little bit. And I want to bring the fact forward, the fact that Sarah had troubles getting pregnant. And maybe she'd had troubles getting pregnant because of genetic problem. Yeah, I'm throwing shade. Maybe there is a reason why. You guys saying no, don't skip it. I'm skipping it because this is about Ishmael. But you know what? I'll go back to it. I'll go back to it because there is another interesting character, right, that I want to address that appears in the story of Lot and in that area and that time, which is Amalek. Amalek appears here. So that's why we'll go back to Sodom. But let's skip ahead a little bit. And Sarah had troubles giving birth. Now this is where there is the biblical version and the interesting conversation that is here is that here is the way I read it, and then there are interpretations. So there is an entire book that was written by a Hasidic Jew about why he believes that what really happened was not that Sarah had suggested giving away Hagar, which is that was her maiden. So Hagar she worked for Sarah, and that's important to understand, by the way. Um, Hagar, she was Sarah's servant, and when you are someone's servant, you are not the servant of her husband. She is the servant of Sarah, right? She belongs to Sarah in that society, um, not not Abraham's. So the book actually argues that Sarah didn't want Abraham to have relations with Hagar, even though she couldn't give birth. But the Bible claims that, and I think that there is a very good reason to think that Sarah actually did oppose to it, and it was covered up later on, because if Sarah had opposed to it, and then that was the story that would be written in the Bible, it would have been very problematic. And Abraham had painted himself as being a very uncomfortable character for the Jewish tradition and the understanding of right and wrong of Judaism and Jews today. So the story here in the Bible is that she couldn't give birth, so she gave her maiden away to Abraham. But here's something that I want to make apparent, to talk about. So she had an Egyptian servant, Hagar, and here's the thing that is interesting. So the Bible clearly said that he listened to his wife when he had those relations. And I kind of tend to agree that the reason that it's written that way is to hide that it was maybe not that real story originally. And this is, I really want to read the book that was written about that, where this rabbi claims that it was actually not something that Sarah wanted to do. But but the Bible claims, and not only that it claims that it was her suggestion, it was like it emphasizes that Abraham listened to his wife. So because this is like a cultural shift. What is the source? The Bible? What do you mean? So here, and this is the interesting part, which I noticed. Something there from the get-go feels wrong. And to me, I feel like Hagar didn't agree to those relations. The source of the rabbi making that claim. I need to, it was a personal conversation on Sabbath. I really need to look it up. But I kind of believe it, honestly, like, it was a whole conversation. But which Hasidic, I don't, I wish I remembered it, honestly, but it was in the conversation that we had in the dinner. So I kind of believe it, honestly. And the reason I believe it is something that comes up a little bit later. So this is what I think. Hagar wasn't a person that had relations with consent. And later on in Judaism, marital rape was recognized. The first source, the first talk about marital rape And the reason why, even if you're married to a woman, you cannot have relations with her if she doesn't want to or she's not in the mood. The reasoning that Judaism has for it, and the reason that Judaism is actually the first culture that talks about why marital and bans marital rape. Here is the reasoning. The reasoning is that whether or not you're married doesn't matter, because if a seed is planted, right, if a baby is born out of relations that weren't made with love, the kid would come out screwed, like something would be wrong with them. And because of that observation, Judaism said rape, no. Relations need to be with love, because the seed of relations that are done violently, even if you are married, that the baby, the child that is born out of it, something is very wrong with them. And so this is what I'm saying. And once she got pregnant, she was like, okay, now I'm better than the woman that couldn't get pregnant. So she tried to replace Sarah in the family hierarchy, not understanding like her position. And it was a whole drama. And then she was like, listen, you got to understand your position. It doesn't matter that you gave birth, because you are the servant of Sarah. And Hagar herself didn't completely understand what that means, that she is the servant of Sarah, not the servant of Abraham. And the baby she gave birth to was not supposed to be hers. It was supposed to be Sarah's. And she was not, it feels like she was not happy. She was forced into something she didn't want to do. So there is a double non-consensual kind of situation. And so she gave birth to a boy that was described as a wild man, Pele Adam, and his hands were everywhere. And the interpretation of him having his hands everywhere is not, if you want to take the, the beautifying or maybe the forgiving kind of interpretation, that would be he was interested in everyone's business. The probably more likely kind of interpretation is he was a sex offender. And Sarah was like, we cannot have that kind of person. Yeah, he was handsy, exactly. And exactly, wild man with wandering head. Booty of the right hand. You guys understand what it's about, all right? I don't need to go too much into. So the entire family dynamic, it's a warning, right? There is a woman that gave birth without wanting to, that gave birth to a boy that she did not consent to the type of deal, that she didn't understand what she was doing. And then when here is another interesting and then Sarah was like, no, we cannot do. And she was like, we have to banish them. The person that cannot keep his hands to himself, we have to banish them. Because at that point, by the way, Sarah is actually finally Sarah understands the mission and speaks up. And when and Abraham is like, like he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to banish them. And he was like, the forgiven father, so, he touches a little bit here and there, whatever. Sarah said that is unacceptable, banish them. And this is when God intervened. And he said, you listen to your wife. She has a greater prophetic power than you do. So then the situation was very much settled, right? So it was clear, and finally it was made clear to Abraham that with all due respect, your wife is the one you should be listening to. And there is another very interesting fact of in the Jewish tradition. So Ishmael was 13 years old when he was circumcised. And while he was in pain, and while he needed his mother there with him the most, the mother, Hagar, she didn't want to be there with him. She said she doesn't want to be there when her son goes through that procedure, and she was absent. This is a very interesting dynamic. We're seeing a mother that is unwilling to be there for her son, and a son that behaves in a violent, sexual, aggressive way. And the interpretation that comes later on is in Judaism is that created a very different understanding of what is God in Ishmael's head versus Isaac's head. So Isaac, who was went through the procedure on the 8th day after he was born, didn't remember anything. But to Ishmael started conflating suffering and pain with worship. To him, going through torture was worship. So that we have here. And it was Sarah who, and of course Ishmael also was God told him, hey, you're gonna be a big people, but he didn't get to be the continuation of the Jewish people, but Sarah had appointed Isaac, and later on, um, of course, Rivka had appointed Jacob as well. So and then we have in the end, when Abraham had passed away, Ishmael came back, and he and Isaac together buried their father. But it was written in a way that here is how I interpret it. It looks like, okay, this is my interpretation. It's written in a way that shows that Isaac and Ishmael were there to bury their father together, but Ishmael was there to check the old man finally died, while Isaac was mourning. That's my own personal understanding, because there is something there. There's like a hint there that says that the feelings Ishmael had weren't necessarily pure. So one came to see that the old man finally died, and the other was Isaac. And he is the continuation of the Jewish civilization, while Ishmael went ahead and multiplied. So we have a person that Ishmael, and the reason and the Arabs being identified with Ishmael is that we are seeing people who have rape in their culture. They have uncontrollable behavior when it comes to their more primitive needs. And at the same time, Ishmael made sure that they are still very good at hosting and hospitality, ironically enough. So good at hospitality, rapists, the mothers are not there, the their relations are consent unnecessary, and lots of wild men. If you think that there is any sort of compliment when Arabs are nicknamed or Muslims are nicknamed the sons of Ishmael, well, there isn't. So who was sacrificed, whether it's Isaac, whether it's Ishmael, that's a different. I don't want to get into that story. I don't want to get into. But the thing is, the story of Abraham, in many ways, is a story that shows us what should not be. So Abraham took a step towards truth, took a courageous step to get out of the culture he knew. And in the end, he learned that he is supposed to be listening to Sarah. But there was a lot that had to be changed. So so let's take a little bit of a sidetrack and talk about Amalek, right? So what we are clearly seeing here, by the way, is that Ishmael and Amalek are different peoples, right? So the Muslims and the Arabs and Amalek are not the same people. But I want to offer something that is not non-traditional and obviously doesn't appear in the Bible. But if you go back to the time of Muhammad, you'd remember that even though the Arabs had been in Saudi Arabia and the sons of Ishmael were dwelling there, they weren't what they are today. It wasn't Islam yet. The culture that we are seeing right now is not purely Ismailite, right? There is something more to it. There is also the culture of Amalek. So we know, if we take the Quran and we read it, that culture, right, this behavior, the targeting of the young, the targeting of those who cannot protect themselves, this behavior, right, this looting, that is Amalek, right? This barbaric behavior that is about, stealing and other kind of behaviors. This is literally something that had been added to the culture later on. So my argument is Islam was born from Ishmael and Amalek coming together and birthing Satan. So that's what I think. And it's a very interesting story. That isn't Amalek. Amalek is what appeared in Europe 90 years ago, and it's the same though. It's the same thing that appeared in the Quran and in Muslim tradition. So I see if you guys let me see your comments here. Spooky Shana, hands everywhere meant handsy. Interesting. In church, he is just as depicted as violent, like he likes to throw hands in American slang. That's the medium, like the traditional. The nicest tradition is he's in everyone's business. Then the second one is violent. The third one, he's a sex offender. Yeah. So I don't believe that story. Hagar had posted for a time. It must be fabrication. She was prophetess, talking to angels face to same and truther. She was talking to angels. That's true. Not gonna lie. But just because somebody can predict the future, it doesn't mean that the future that they predict is something that you want to see. That's unfortunately the kind of culture that we're seeing. We're seeing this understanding that godhood is pain. We're seeing the understanding that godhood is literally the opposite of the understanding that of you in the Quran they had made sure that it's clear that God expects you to sacrifice your children, and the basically. So Amalek is a child of Esav, not Ishmael. I said exactly, it's not Amalek is a child of Esav, not Ishmael. I'm saying Islam is a marriage of both. The sons of Ishmael had fused with the culture of Amalek. God can love Hagar and still tell Sarah to protect the bloodline of the Jewish people. Um, is it love though? I don't know. All right. Haman is Amalek Purim. Do you guys not like that separation, but in the end of the day, Amalek and Ishmael resided the same geographical area, and that came together in the Quran. There are elements of Amalek and that absolute hate, looting, needing to hurt, and the jihad. Jihad is Amalek. Jihad is an Amalekite tradition. It's not that like it's not that he came to a place. The Arabs were like dancing naked around the Kaaba. You know, as far as I'm concerned, they had married both. So that's my consideration. I think yes, Amalek and Ishmael were separate, and they had combined. That's what I'm thinking. That's my view of that. There was a recombination of those. No, recombination. It was a merge of those two cultures into what now is Islam. Right. I'm not super into Bible, but don't get me started on how prison gay and iniquitous Muslims are openly. I've seen it way too much in prison. You know what people see when they are observing the borders? Like, mhm. Anyways, all right, spooky Shana. I think Christians, sometimes called the Sav in Islam, always give each other the worst ideas. True. Yeah. You can you can see that, right? Um, but I think Islam is already emergent and merge of both. It's already Amalek with Ishmael. It's the merge of those two. So this is how I read it, and I think it's the interesting thing here. The interesting thing here, right? It's that it has a lot of criticism on the nuclear family, what happens when it's done wrong, and how awful the consequences of it are, and the clear, unapologetic explanation that Sarah is the one that is right. Sarah is the one that was just. Sarah is the one that who had the greatest power of prophecy there. And that's the way it is. All right, everybody. We're gonna wrap up. Okay, so I just wanna plug in a little bit. So the first link in my description below is a form for those who want to join the great idea, the great initiative of bringing thinking back to the West and thinking back to humanity. I'm having a Zoom call tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Israel time. So sign up in the form if you guys want to join the Zoom call and understand what's that about. So there is a whole pitch deck I'm going to go through that explains exactly what needs to be done to fight the zombie apocalypse that we are seeing right now. And after that, you can decide whether to join me or act independently. And thank you again, Spukishana. Well, Christianity is the combination of Isaac and Esav, arguably. You could say that 100%. All right, I hope everyone is great and well. I hope that you enjoyed yesterday's session. But all right, you want to Zoom, then sign up. It's the first link in the description below. All right, everybody. Good night.